Jane Unchained live talk with the amazing Rachel McChrystal of Woodstock Animal Sanctuary in New York State. Tell us about your extraordinary offer to factory farmers, an offer, as they say in the movies, they can't refuse, but in truth, they shouldn't refuse.
Yeah, so we are, I'm here with Liz DeFeo, who's our marketing director. We, as most people probably saw, when the pandemic was in its early stages, slaughterhouse shutdowns were happening across the country. And what was happening is that at these really big industrial farms, the pipeline of breeding to slaughter was being basically backed up, especially on chicken farms and also on pig farms, because they had the shortest amount of time from birth to slaughter, which is so terrible. So what was happening, and there was like stories, front page of the New York Times, you can see the coverage here. There was stories on NPR about how terrible it was that farms were having to kill the animals and throw them away, essentially. There are stories nationally, there's lots of stories locally. And what was happening on the back end is sanctuaries were reaching out to those farms and saying, hey, we can save some lives. And so what we decided to do is actually start a petition, really encouraging everybody to, if you're killing animals and you're running a farm and there's a home at a sanctuary, why not surrender animals? And so we've had over 14,000 signers. We've sent the petition to over 50 large industrial farms. We've sent the petition to everybody who we know has publicly said in the media how terrible it is that they're having to kill animals on their farms. And I know that a lot of other sanctuaries have also been reaching out and trying to save some of these animals. But yeah, that's the offer, that if these shutdowns keep happening because of COVID-19, both diseases at the slaughterhouses and also disruptions in the pipeline, and there's a home for some of the beings in these farms, why wouldn't you take a sanctuary up on that offer, right?
Absolutely. You're hitting a very, very key point, because I remember there were news reports about how farmers were grieving. That was the actual phrase used, that they had to kill their own animals. And I'm sure some of them were. But by the same token, when you are offering them an opportunity to not do that, to allow people to come in and rescue their animals, and they don't avail themselves of it, then how grief-stricken are they? And I want to show some images here. This is a rescue of hens that were to be depopulated, going into a sanctuary in Northern California. Activists who are taking in these animals, and I'd like to show you, here's a picture of one of them. Look at the condition that these animals are in these factory farms, a seared beak and lacking a lot of feathers. A lot of them needed extreme veterinary care. So this is the kind of rescue that you are proposing, and they would go from a hellish life inside factory farms to something that is truly wonderful. I'd like to play a little video of what happens when the animals go to your amazing sanctuary, which is the Woodstock Animal Sanctuary in New York State, just a couple of hours drive from Midtown Manhattan. Check out what life is like for those animals who are rescued from the horrors of modern day industrialized animal agriculture, which is a giant torture machine. Here's where they go. Wow, is that beautiful? What a gorgeous life. This is how animals should live, and they shouldn't look like this. The idea that anybody would want to eat an animal that is kept in this condition is also something that people should consider. Okay, a lot of the animals, I can tell you now, when they're rescued, have worms and all sorts of parasites, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get back to your incredible offer. Here it is. It's a call out to animal farms who would be willing to surrender some animals instead of killing them on site because of slaughterhouse closings or decreases in their market. We are working with a coalition of farm sanctuaries to try and save some lives. And where can they email you? How can these farmers get involved, Rachel? And we'd be happy to bring Liz into the conversation too.
So they can email us at farmoutreach@woodstocksanctuary.org. And basically, I mean, we all know there's not enough homes for all the animals on farms, but there are some sanctuary homes available. We actually worked, there's a huge coalition of sanctuaries that saved about 1,500 chickens from an egg farm recently in Iowa. The lead sanctuaries on the ground were Iowa Farm Sanctuary, Barn Sanctuary, and then Animal Place, also out in California, airlifted 1,200 chickens to safety. So there are homes that can happen when sanctuaries mobilize together. But we need farms to be willing to surrender animals and work with us, and it's the ethical thing to do. And I think you made a really good point, Jane, in that the coverage that we've seen has been very sympathetic to these farm owners who are killing these animals because they can't send them to slaughter. But those animals would be dead anyway, and I think what is being highlighted is how terrible the job of killing animals is. And normally that's done by marginalized people at slaughterhouses. And we just need to stop doing it. And if we can save a few lives in the process of these, baby pigs that would be thrown away anyway, these chickens, also babies that are being gassed and thrown away. We just want farms to take us up on it.
Yeah, and there's so many important points here. One of the things that I think was very misleading about the coverage, by the way, the same news outlets, the major news outlets that did all this coverage about farmers grieving about how to kill their own animals, about having to kill their own animals, should now cover you. And definitely you should do a major PR demand for coverage, because my first reaction when I saw that was, okay, there's no Santa Claus. These farmers are very well aware that even though because of coronavirus, they are having to so-called depopulate their animals, that they have to know when they put them on that truck and say bye-bye, they're going to a horrific slaughter death that is in industrialized agriculture, that is something out of a horror movie. But then I thought about it a little bit and I said, you know what, maybe they are coming to terms with what they're actually doing, because we work, for example, with Renee King Sonnen of the Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, who was a cattle rancher's wife, and who wrote a whole song about the red trailer going away. It's a lot easier to wave goodbye to a bunch of animals saying, okay, they're going away, than having to kill them yourself. And now these farmers are having to come to terms with the horror of what they actually do. And consumers are having to face the horror of what they are actually co-conspirators in, which is the torture, yes, torture, and killing of these sentient beings who are just like our dogs and cats. So now you're saying, hey, you say you're grieving, you say you don't like this process. Well, here's something you can do about it. You can invite us to take these animals that you would otherwise gas to death, or these horrific, horrific processes where they basically turn off the oxygen and these animals die over a long period of time. And then those who are left still gasping for breath are shot in the head. Some of the most horrific footage that has ever been recorded as part of the animal rights movement. So first of all, the news media's description of this as euthanasia is wildly inaccurate. That is truly fake news. This is the furthest thing from euthanasia, this depopulation of animals, this bottleneck. What we're seeing now is that we have a system that is completely morally bankrupt and unworkable. It's a high-speed killing system for billions of animals. And anybody who has a couple of companion animals in their home knows that it takes a certain work and care to take for two. You cannot successfully or kindly take care of a warehouse filled with 100,000 animals and then ship them off. This is the modern day farm, by the way. It's not a farm. They're giant windowless warehouses where animals are kept in these camps, okay, these prisons. Okay, this is the reality. And anybody who says, oh, please, that's not necessary, it's the truth. This is the modern day factory farm right here. So I will say, give some props out to some of the farmers. The recent rescue of this particular chicken and many others, a farmer did exactly what you're saying. He called the animal rights and the sanctuaries in the area and he said, come and get them. And sanctuaries, and we were happy to be involved, from all over California went and took some of these chickens, and he even took the hens to the trucks of the animal activists, and he himself called it a liberation. That is the ideal, right, Rachel and Liz?
Yeah, well, the ideal would be then to transition to plant-based agriculture, obviously.
Yeah, stop farming animals after that.
Yeah, but I think that the truth is that there's never going to be enough homes at sanctuaries for these beings. I mean, we're talking about billions of animals that are killed either as babies or like that little red star hen who was, abused probably for 18 months of her life, never going outside. That's the reason why her comb is floppy. That's the reason why her coloring is so bad. Never going outside. Laying egg after egg after egg, so much so that the rescuers are now going to have to provide extraordinary medical care in order to keep her healthy for the rest of her life. So the amount of animals that need sanctuaries to the amount of homes there are is small, but there are some homes, and to give a liberation and kindness is it's the ethical thing to do.
Yes, and let me ask you, how are you guys holding up in this pandemic where obviously it has impacted everybody? I mean, the front page of the New York Times is quite frightening this morning. But also sanctuaries, because you rely on visitors. Your sanctuary is absolutely idyllic. I've been there. I got a tour from you, Rachel, and the way you treat these animals is really the ultimate. And so how are you guys holding up during this pandemic?
We're doing great. All things considered, it's been challenging this year to handle a pandemic, still take care of nearly 400 animals, and keep the uprise of fundraising coming in. But what we are doing is getting really creative to keep our fans and followers and supporters connected with the farmed animals here by connecting with them digitally. So we are currently offering digital tours that people can sign up for called Sanctuary Strolls, which you can find on our website, woodstocksanctuary.org. That's a great way to support us right now. You can get a nice private tour with a group of your friends or your coworkers, or you can hop on a public link and just meet some chickens, hang out with some pigs, interact with the cows. It's a really beautiful experience. We know that obviously meeting animals in person is life-changing, but we do believe that our connectiveness with digital content too can, also just be as gratifying. And in tandem with that, we are still closed to the public. So we aren't welcoming tours. We aren't welcoming the public on site, but we have reopened our inn. So our on-site inn is open, the Gray Barn. Yes, and which is very exciting, and it is booking up, but we are only taking stays that are a week long. So full rental of the entire inn that are a week long. So you can book it with your friends, your family, and get a nice staycation or a sanctuary within a sanctuary is how I always phrase the inn itself. And yeah, you can come stay with us and stay on site and get a tour, but that's the only way right now we're interacting with the public, just to keep everyone safe, the animal, staff, the community.
Just since you introduced that, just to give people, once again, I think it's worth playing a little bit of that video again so people get a sense of where they would be staying in New York State, just a couple of hours drive out of Manhattan, a great getaway. So many people I talk to, I'm from New York City, so they would love to get away. What a wonderful, wonderful way to sort of regroup during this very troubling and stressful time. I just could watch that all day. Let's just call it what it is. Why would you want to those beautiful innocent animals do this kind of horror? Why would you want to put them on dead piles? Why would you want to leave them on a factory, farm, warehouse, or send them into this kind of horrific slaughter? It's not good for any of us. It's not good for the planet. It's a leading cause of climate change, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, because these animals, just like your dogs and cats, eat far more than they are worth their weight in meat or dairy. And it's killing people with heart disease and cancer. It's the reason why we have pandemics right now. There's a swine flu in China that's rearing its ugly head, along with the zoonotic pandemic we're dealing with now. Then there's avian flu. Rachel, you're at the heart of it, and you're also in New York, and I know a lot of visitors from Manhattan and from the big, what you call power infrastructures of our culture, whether it's finance, media, what have you, visit your sanctuary. Do you see the winds of change? Because we're told that when we get 3.5% of the population on board, that would be the tipping point to a plant-based culture.
I am simultaneously very hopeful and also feel constantly like we're not doing enough, we're not moving fast enough. I feel like that, especially as regards climate change and just the overwhelming amount of beings that are being brutalized by animal ag, is something that I don't think our human brains can actually fathom. But I think more and more people are getting it. And the thing that really gives me hope is the fact that people are so disconnected from what happens to animals on farms across this country and across the world. And they have literally no idea that these are amazing, brilliant, weird beings that are, that this is not their natural state, and that they could be living these alternative lives. And so when you make a connection, whether it's in person or hopefully, which will happen again post-COVID, or via digital, the digital world, like Liz was saying, people are immediately transformed. And I think the animals here at Woodstock and at sanctuaries across this country are making more vegans and more activists than anybody else, because their stories are so compelling and incredible. I mean, we just took in 5 little hens from a giant egg farm in South Jersey, a giant industrial egg farm that burned down 2 weeks ago. 300,000 birds burnt to death or suffocated within that farm. And luckily, there was 2 sanctuaries that were just neighbors of this farm and were able to go in and actually save some survivors. So overall, over 200 chickens were saved. 5 came here. We're calling them the flower flock. We gave them flower names. And they're burned. Their combs are burned. One has a broken leg from where a shed fell on her. But people are learning about what happens in egg farms because of stories like that. So even though only 200 were able to be liberated, 300,000 died, all of them were going to be dead anyway. And now we have these 200 that are safe, 5 of whom are here, and they're representatives for the billions that no one will ever meet and never see. And I think people's hearts are opening up in that way. But I think we have to, like, as activists, we have to ramp it up. We're in a pandemic. We're all locked in our houses. This is the time. And I don't know what you feel like, Jane, but I feel like I'm very hopeful about the youngest generation of activists that are so incredibly driven and are integrating these issues in a way that I feel like most of us have never done as successfully as they are. They're climate activists, they're human justice activists, they're animal activists. They're just these like incredible people that are that know that their very survival is dependent upon this, and that we all have to be on the right side of history and fight for the rights of these beings and for the planet. And that makes me feel hopeful, is all those younger activists.
I'm hopeful because I see in this terrible tragedy, the obvious lesson is this is a zoonotic disease. it stems from our abuse of animals. You can quibble about where exactly it started. Nobody disputes that it's a zoonotic disease, and it was first spotted in a slaughter market in China, as was SARS. And you have the swine flu, and you have the avian flu, and there's also mad cow disease. Now, of course, the mainstream media is very reluctant to connect the dots, because look at the TV commercials: meat, dairy, and pharmaceuticals. The very industries would collapse if people transition to a healthy plant-based diet. However, I do feel that the infrastructure is being cracked open, and it's this coronavirus where you see, because of the coronavirus, and we can show you some of the headlines, you have closing some of the meat plants, which is why you have the bottleneck, which is creating the depopulation, where because there's a bottleneck, you can't slaughter the animals in the slaughterhouses. The farmers have to kill them themselves. Then you step in and say, hey, farmers, you say you're upset about this. Give us the animals. We're willing to take them in and distribute them to sanctuaries and work with other sanctuaries. Because of that, people are learning about a couple of things. They're learning about worker exploitation. And I want to show a photograph of it's a very disturbing photograph of a woman who works at a slaughterhouse, who got COVID-19 and who was in the hospital. And these are people at the lowest end, as you mentioned, of the socioeconomic ladder, immigrants who come in here who have very little choice of job and who are exploited. And there's now a civil rights complaint that was filed demanding that the USDA and the Department of Justice look into the fact that this is, according to the complaint, racial discrimination, because almost exclusively the people who are doing the killing are people of color and recent immigrants, many from Latin America, but from all over the world. There's 30 languages spoken at one slaughterhouse alone. So those progressives who like to dismiss us and say, I care about people, not animals. A, we care about people. We want to end world hunger and heart disease and cancer. But B, now people are literally potentially dying because somebody feels entitled to eat a chicken wing or a slice of bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lauren Ornelas from Food Empowerment Project. I was listening to some quotes from her this morning about that very subject. And she put it way more eloquently than I ever could, but she said that nobody should be in those slaughterhouses. Animals shouldn't be in those slaughterhouses. People shouldn't be in those slaughterhouses. We have to abolish them and reform our food system as a whole to make it better for people and workers. But in particular, nobody should be in those slaughterhouses. They're terrible. And that's what we're trying to point at with this petition. We want to save lives. And I'm so happy that so many sanctuaries have stepped up and are continuing to save animals from depopulation. Like you note, Jane, it's not just a problem with the pandemic. Depopulation is a common farming practice. It happens when any animal gets too old to breed, whether that's 2 years old with egg-laying hens or 4 to 6 years old with dairy cows. Depopulation is this common practice. But now that the media is actually talking about it, and these industrial farm owners are saying how terrible it is that they have to do it, it's like, let's point at that and say, okay, it's bad. Killing animals is bad. It's terrible. It's traumatic. It's awful. So let's figure out alternatives. And we're hoping that we can help point at the problem and save some lives in the process. Because I actually, speaking of hope, the fact that we are getting calls when all these news stories hit, we were getting calls from people who eat animals who were saying, oh my God, did you see that story in the New York Times that they're killing babies? And the fact that farms kill babies is not a news story, except in this certain instance, because it was in this specific way and because there was the COVID link, it became a news story. And so I think we need to be.
Yeah. All the animals pretty much are babies. The pigs are 6 months old when they're slaughtered. The veal calves are babies. Even the cows that are slaughtered are spent. They're only a couple of years old, even though cows could live to 25 years. if they weren't being subjected to this industrialized torture. It's I do see, like, talk about the New York Times, even though they still put chicken recipes on their front page, whatever. They do, for example, because they have to talk about slaughterhouses are one of the hotbeds of COVID-19, along with prisons and nursing homes. And so they had to do an examination of the almost impossibility to social distance in a slaughterhouse. And they did a whole outline of the kill floor. Oh, you really, they have to be killed? And so it wakes people up to the fact that when you look at that little patty and you order it, you are participating in an extraordinarily violent act. And so I feel like it's made people come to terms with the fact that these products that they're eating were individuals, were beings. It's shattering the illusion that somehow there's bacon trees and chicken wing trees, and showing the reality that you'd really have to be in willful denial to avoid.
Yeah, and that's the basis of sanctuary work, right? And it's like, how do we make people see, how do we liberate animals and give them lifelong sanctuary? And then how do we tell their stories in such a way that people see them? And actually, we have a dairy campaign right now that actually really speaks to that, which I love.
We do. We rescued a cow named Joe.
Who's in that video?
Who is in that video you've played in the beginning with our shelter director, Hervé, walking for a snack. And she's doing fantastic. But she was rescued from a dairy farm near Ithaca, New York, about 3 hours north of us. And we rescued her with her friend, Af, who unfortunately died during emergency surgery post-rescue. And in Af's honor and Joe's honor, we created this Dairy Truth campaign, is what we call it. It's called meetjoe.org. And it kind of just takes you through some just truthful facts about the dairy industry. And we purposely made this website and this campaign inviting, I would say, and not scary. It's not graphic. It's all illustrated, except for obviously the wonderful photos of Joe and videos. But we really just want to invite people to lift the veil and see what's going on in the dairy industry in an approachable, non-intimidating way. So that's what the motive behind Dairy Truth was. And we've had over 1,000 pledge takers. There's a pledge on the website, meetjoe.org, to take a pledge to promise to abstain and stop using dairy products. Or if you already don't consume dairy, just keep going and sign in solidarity. And we've just seen such a positive reaction. And I really actually believe it's been such a positive reaction to it so far because of the headlines in COVID and the other stuff going on that's making all the news headlines and everything.
Yeah, you guys are extraordinary, and we persevere no matter what's happening. We're going to move forward. Woodstock Farm Animal Sanctuary is going to be just fine. You're doing incredible work in the interim. Please let us know if and when you get responses from some of the farmers to your call to accept.
We really hope we will, because I know some people are really wary of dealing with animal activists, but this is an option to save some lives. And we just, farm outreach at woodstocksanctuary.org, any leads that anybody has about any depopulations happening in their community, farmers that are reaching out, email us, and we will try to work. We'll try to save some lives. I really hope people take us up on it.
And I really hope that you do a PR campaign and reach out to those reporters who covered the story of the grieving farmers who were forced to euthanize their animals, euthanasia being completely inaccurate term, that they do a follow-up now, report on your effort to take those animals in. And
I always take PR advice from Jane Velez Mitchell. So
well, I think that that would be a great follow-up story for them, since they assume that these folks were grieving. Now they have an opportunity to save lives. And I do believe that farmers are trapped in the system, and I do believe that obviously the slaughterhouse workers are trapped in the system. Nobody goes to college to become a slaughterhouse worker. Nobody goes to college to become somebody who kills animals day in and day out. Unfortunately, the system is morally bankrupt. The people are trapped in it, and we all can offer them a way out simply by transitioning to plant-based. And it is a process, not an event. This is a wonderful opportunity to start bringing in vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains, making food at home with the tens of thousands of vegetables and fruits that they could use, and grains. So hopefully people are transitioning. So I just want to thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Your campaign is absolutely incredible. And we'll just show it one more time. They are offering to take in animals surrendered by farmers who are being forced to, quote unquote, depopulate their animals, kill them. It's not euthanasia. It's a very, very cruel, violent, and just gut-wrenching process. Instead, those farmers, those factory farmers, can give the animals to these women and the other sanctuaries working with them and save the animals' lives. Let's stay on top and see how many farmers take them up on it. Thank you so much. Talk soon.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you.